Eternia is a peaceful kingdom with a lot of problems. The core of the problem and the solution all lies in Castle Grayskull, a repertoire of the complete magical wisdom of Eternia. While powerful foes like Skeletor and King Hiss desperately try to find out the secrets of Grayskull, Prince Adam guards it with the Sword of Grayskull, aka the Power Sword, which turns him into the unbeatable He-Man. The Power Sword was a much coveted object for the villains of Eternia, who would love to dominate the planet, but Adam never let it out of his sight. Now this script has been flipped. There's a new sword in town, and Skeletor has already set his sights on it. If you have been following along as I read Masters of the Universe Sword of Flaws, you will know of all the trouble this new sword has brought already. Now the latest issue explores the origins of this sword. Will Adam stop Skeletor before he gets his hand on the Sword of Flaws? Keep up with me and I will let you know. A new sword and an old enemy. It has been a while since I last read the comic books, so let's do a quick recap. Our story began with Prince Adam taking Prince Stahl of Eisenhold on a tour around Eternia. The prince criticizes Adam for not controlling He-Man, the most powerful man of the universe, as it shows the weakness of the rulers. Adam cannot defend himself and risk ruining his disguise as the bumbling weak prince, so he simply stuffs his mouth with sandwiches. Their tour is interrupted by earthquakes caused by the forces of Snake Mountain, and Adam slips away to return as He-Man. The sorceress Captain Tila, man-at-arms, and the soldiers of Eternia immediately begin battling Skeletor, who has armed himself with a core breaker and is targeting Castle Grayskull with Evil Lyn, Cobra Khan, Triclops, and his henchmen. Stahl joins in the battle and helps Tila take down Skeletor, while Duncan faces Triclops and He-Man and the Sorceress secure Grayskull. Though Skeletor is subdued, Stahl turns on the core breaker again to take out Grayskull and He-Man. In his muddled head, Prince Stahl thought that taking out the two strengths of Eternia was better than maintaining peaceful relations. Duncan is the MVP of the battle though, as he shoots the core breaker while taking down Triclops. Skeletor and his hopeless allies tuck their tails between their legs before running off to Snake Mountain, while Stahl's father, King Faust, agreed to bilateral talks because of his son's actions. Back at the palace, Tila reads the riot act to Adam for running off, not knowing he is He-Man, and asks him to train with her in the morning. Duncan consoles him, telling him that one day she will know the truth, and the burden of being He-Man would one day make him a great king. I wonder how hard it must be to maintain a completely different alter ego, especially when you have to pretend to be an idiotic coward in your real life. Bet Batman and Iron Man don't have this problem, as their real selves are rich playboy philanthropists. In Snake Mountain, Triclops withers in pain as he sees visions of something. Meanwhile, the reconnaissance team who had been assessing Eternia for damage had discovered that the Heaven Piercer, the highest peak in the cairn of Pantheon's mountain range, had opened to reveal a violet-powered sword that looked exactly like He-Man's sword. Mechaneck, one of the reconnaissance team members, stumbles into the court of King Randor and explains that a wave of illness and delirium had spread in the north after the quakes. He also tells them about the power sword they had discovered. Duncan and a team of his best men set out to find the sword, and Skeletor, who had received the news from Triclops' vision, also prepares a team to leave. Adam asks the sorceress if she knew anything about another sword, but she draws a blank. She has a plan though, and she asks Orko's help for it. Meanwhile, Adam and Cringer empower themselves with the power sword they had and set out to the cairn of Pantheons. Buried in the snows of the mountain range, Duncan and his team find Photog, who tells them that the only reason he wasn't affected by the illness brought on by the quakes was because he was drawing energy unknowingly from a nearby god, Procrustes, the lord of the inner earth. The sleeping god had discovered the energy vampire and had awakened with a lot of rage. That's not the only reason for his anger though, as Procrustes is also angry about not being worshipped anymore. He-Man arrives just in time and kills the god, who warns him that something evil had returned to Eternia that would rob the kingdom of its tomorrow. On the eastern side of the mountains, Skeletor had met a god too, Nuitaruk. an ancient god with bat-like wings who was worshipped by the Dark Moon people. Triclops explains that the new sword had been drawing power from the gods as it had no power of its own. While this is going on, the sorceress and Orko decide to travel back in time to Preternia to find out why another power sword was made. Post-war regrets. That brings us to the new issue, which begins at the moment Procrustes crumbled into dust after one stab from the power sword. He-Man cannot believe that he just killed a god. All he wanted to do was defeat him or wound him enough to help him see the error in his ways. He gathers up the dust in his palms and regretfully realizes that he took the life of an immortal. Teela reasons with him that he did what he had to do in the heat of the battle. Photog blames himself for Procrustes' death, as he thinks that he drained so much power from Procrustes that he could not resist He-Man's attack. Duncan tells them that the only thing to blame was the violet blade that was draining life from those around it, so they needed to get to it as quickly as possible. Stridor, the mechanical horse, had taken a lot of damage in the fight against Procrustes. Teela initiates a complete shutdown and puts her to sleep. Duncan resurrects Battlebones and has Roboto escort him and the weakened Photog back to the Royal Palace. He then confirms if Rockon and Clampchamp are still able to complete the mission. Knowing that the team he has now is capable of moving forward, he diverts his attention to He-Man, who hadn't moved from his position, kneeling by the dust of Procrustes. He confides in Duncan that he's afraid of killing someone else because of his unbridled strength. Duncan talks some sense into him and reminds him that though being He-Man was fun so far, the real burden of being a soldier was this, but thankfully, he did not have to carry it on his own. Battlecat keeps a paw on his shoulder and tells him that he is not alone. This talk helps He-Man get his head back in the game. To be honest, anybody would be motivated to do anything if their pet literally encouraged them to. I would single-handedly reach Mars if my dog began speaking. Daydreams aside, He-Man did not know what the sword was that hurt Photog, Mechanex, Strobo, Stratos, and led to the death of Procrustes, but he trusts the sorceress and Orko to look beyond the wisdom of the ancients to find out about it. A journey back to Preternia. His trust was not misplaced as the sorceress and Orko made their way to the Three Towers in Preternia, which was the seat of power during that time. Orko is completely hyped up, and he asks whether he can take a photo, but cameras probably weren't invented back then. His excitement is brought to an abrupt halt when a man walks through him. The sorceress explains that they were like phantoms there, as they were not from that time, and their presence did not disturb and was not perceived by the people there. The man who walked through Orko was Eldor, the keeper of the Book of Living Spell and a practitioner of the magic of light. He was headed to a meeting of the Quadrant of Powers. In attendance were Eldor's apprentice, Gray, Lord Hiss, Chamberlain of Viper, and later King of the Snakemen, who was representing the Snakemen with Grasp, Demoman and Crimson Countess representing the Order of the Dark, and Titus and Megator, men of the First Age. Eldor is late to the meeting and tries to lighten the mood by asking Gray to tell them the story of a man who tried to milk a stegosaur, but the representatives of the Snakemen are really pissed and just want to get on with the meeting. Speak for yourselves, Hiss. I would have loved to hear about this idiot who wanted stegosaur's milk. Technology was capable of making machines that could move faster than the wind, were stronger than dinosaurs, and could answer any question. The arrival of technology was unavoidable. So, Eldor had called the meeting to suggest the creation of an impenetrable fortress that contained all the magic knowledge of their ancestors. This fortress would be built by Gray in the shape of a skull and would ensure the survival of magic when technology eventually took over the entire world. Everybody agrees to the idea, but before leaving, Hiss has a question. He asks Eldor whether a man who would have all that pure, unfiltered magic would become the most powerful man in the universe. Eldor replies that the power was to be shared between everybody and asks what kind of man would want all that power. Though it's a rhetorical question, let me answer that for you, Eldor, the very man in front of you. The sorceress is confused as to why she was being shown all that, as she already knew how Castle Grayskull was built. Orko explains that while doing a magic show, there will always be a group of people who go along with the magician and the skeptics, who will never be convinced, and a good magician would ignore the skeptics to perform well for the believers. This is an allusion to Hiss's belief of a shared knowledge system, but the magician in this allegory, Gray, had noticed Hiss's lust for power, and you can bet your ass he won't ignore this powerful skeptic. The meeting of the two sides. Meanwhile, in the cairn of Pantheons, Rakun flies ahead to scout the path, but comes back tumbling thanks to Skeletor and his minions. A battle begins with the two forces, with each trying to get the violet blade for themselves. Evil Lyn commands her forces to throw the Masters of the Union to the ground and claims the blade for Snake Mountain. Duncan can't help but laugh at this, as he knows Lyn is too selfish to give anyone a magical relic. Stinkor attacks Cringer and Teela, who knocks him out with a powerful kick. Panther tries to take a nip out of He-Man's arms, but he gets rid of the giant cat with a punch. As Skeletor inches closer to the sword, He-Man tells him that he won't get it, but Skeletor insists, as the sword is so his color. I always knew Skeletor was a diva, and now I have proof. Triclops crashes down in the snow as He-Man and Skeletor fight it out. Skeletor is not happy about He-Man's meaty frame always showing up to block his true potential. He-Man puts him in his place by telling him what Skeletor really is: small, petty, self-absorbed, and not worthy of being trusted by henchmen or allies. He doesn't stop there. No, He-Man's on a roll. He says that not only is Skeletor a leader who can't lead, but his biggest fault is his disbelief in everything except his desire for more power. He asks Skeletor to do everyone a favor and give up before he gets himself hurt. Though He-Man has the upper hand, he is forced to concede after he sees Duncan held by the neck in Evil Lyn's elbow. Lyn threatens to boil his brain in his helmet if He-Man doesn't let Skeletor take the sword. Duncan asks He-Man to let him die, as the sword is way too important, but Skeletor doesn't wait for He-Man to make a decision. Using He-Man's shock and distraction, he jumps towards the sword. As Skeletor grabs the sword, he reminds He-Man of his shortcoming. He cares too much. As he takes the sword, power rushes through him, and he declares that the sword is what he always wanted. Battle Cat is done with Skeletor's antics and lunges at him with the intent to end evil for good. But Skeletor thrusts the sword into his underbelly and tells He-Man that he was right about one thing. Skeletor only believed in his power, and now he had the perfect weapon to show it. We are left with this: Battle Cat on the ground covered in blood, He-Man screaming out for Battle Cat, and Skeletor brandishing his new sword with gleaming eyes. The origin of the sword. In Preternia, Orko and the sorceress follow Hiss and Grasp to the royal palace, which was reigned by King Viper of the Snake Men. King Viper congratulates his men on securing a seat at the table and leaves with his consort, asking everyone not to call him before noon the next day. Hiss raises a glass to peace, but as soon as the door shuts, calls Viper a damned useless fool. Hiss thinks that his king has grown old and soft and doesn't fear him as he used to. He isn't happy about sharing the knowledge of the Snake Man to people he considers inferior apes. He asks the other Snake Men at the table to join him in slitting Viper's throat, as it would dismantle the quadrant. He was sure that Megator would side with him. When one of them brings up the possibility of war, he assures him that there will be peace, but only for those who submit to his will and accept the rule of King Hiss, Master of the Universe. He wanted to take Grayskull for himself. Though Orko was right about done with the mission and wanted to head to a foot stand or a spa, the sorceress drags him into one last stop in their investigation: Gray's Tower. In the tower, the two witness Gray working hard towards the creation of Gray's skull. He records in his log that though the quadrant is right to fear technology, it is grounded and limited by laws of physics, unlike magic, which is boundless and unpredictable. He knew that the power of all magical knowledge would help all life flourish in the universe, but the wrong usage would bring the universe to its knees. So he decided to create a failsafe, something to protect the universe against the power of Grayskull, and that is the violet sword we saw. I really appreciated the origin story of the sword in this issue, but that does not mean that I am ready to forgive the writers for stopping the story at a cliffhanger as brutal as this. I hope Battle Cat survives the attack of the sword and returns, but I have no way of knowing till the next issue drops. I will be waiting on tenterhooks until February. The rest of the plot was quite interesting too, as it helped put the lore in a chronological order, letting us know the exact moment Hiss decided to be King Hiss. The art is pleasant. Though this art form is not my personal favorite, the color choices and meticulous detail keep your attention trapped amidst the panels. What do you think of the third issue of Masters of the Universe, The Sword of Flaws? Let me know in the comments below. And if you liked the video, you know the drill. Like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell to always stay updated with our content. I will soon be back with more awesome stuff, but until then, take care and pray for Battlecat.